good morning and welcome once again. Today I'm going to talk all of you through the basic of Indian polity. The three topics that I will be discussing today are distribution of power, the union. The union has two components, executive and legislature. The executive has four components. These are the president, vice president, prime minister and council of ministers. These are the topics that I will be discussing today. But before I discuss all these topics in detail, I must say it in the very beginning that these are not part of class 6th NCERT civics book. The reason I'm going to talk about these topics, the reason is because before we talk about different subjects like diversity, secularism, our basics should be clear. We should be able to understand the concept of a country before we discuss or read what makes a country a country. So this is the reason why I have decided to talk not in detail but nevertheless to talk something about these three important things that go into the making of our nation. These are the things that give our country its identity. The first concept is distribution of power. Distribution of powers are of two types. One is horizontal and the second is vertical. Horizontal power of distribution means when power is distributed among different organs of government, the distribution of power is proportionate and these organs are neither less nor higher than the other. For example, the three organs of our union, that is legislature, executive and judiciary, they have a system of horizontal distribution of power, which means that power among these three organs of our country are distributed proportionately. Then there is vertical distribution of power. For example, the union shares power with state and the state in turn shares power with local government like the Panchayati Raj system or municipal corporation and so on and so forth. So this is an example of vertical distribution of power. What is the main difference between horizontal distribution of power and vertical distribution of power? The main difference is that in horizontal distribution of power, no organ is less or more powerful than the other one. For example, judiciary is not more powerful than the executive, nor is executive more powerful than the legislature. But in vertical distribution of power, one organ is more powerful than the other. For example, the Union of India is more powerful than state government, and state government is more powerful than the local body of governments. This is called distribution of power. The framer of our constitution decided to have this system of distribution of power because they knew that Union of India will not hold together until and unless there are checks and balances. So this horizontal distribution of power makes sure that there is check and balance at every level of government. No government, no part of government could become autocratic or omnipotent. They will always be reined in by the other organs if they start taking decisions which are not in favor of the country, which are not beneficial for the people of this country. When Constituent Assembly was debating what kind of constitution we shall have, they came to a conclusion that because of vastness of our country, no one idea could be applicable. So they adopted and incorporated ideas from 60 different constitutions of the world, 60 different democracies of the world. For example, the concept of parliamentary system comes from Britain, we have incorporated the idea of parliamentary system from the British Constitution. We have incorporated the idea of fundamental rights from American Constitution. We have incorporated the idea of emergency, suspension of fundamental rights during emergency from Germany. We have adopted the idea of rule of law from the Constitution of Japan, and so on and so forth. We have also adopted ideas from Irish Constitution. We have adopted ideas from Australian Constitution. There are so many ideas taken from so many different constitutions from all over the world. The reason behind this was that it was felt at the time of freedom of India that because of vastness of our country, no one idea, no one concept could be used for the rest of the country. No one idea could be implemented for a country as vast as ours. So that was the reason behind that. Our concept of nationhood is very different from the concept of European nationhood. Those of you who do not know about the history of nationhood, I will give two examples from two different continents. One is our subcontinent and one is European continent. The idea of nation in Europe is quite a recent one. It's not more than 500 years old. They came to the definition of nation, which is simply not applicable to us. In the year 1648, during the signing of Peace Treaty of Westphalia, different states of Europe sat down and came to a conclusion that a nation is where people of same religion, speaking same language, live within a well-defined political boundary. Now this definition of nationhood cannot be applied to us because India is very vast. We have close to 3,500 dialects in India. We have almost all major religions living in India. So if we adopt that idea of nation, European idea of nation, and superimpose it on our country, then our country will dissolve, because in our country people is speaking the same language. Not only they live, but people is speaking so many different languages. The reason I told you about the European concept of nation and Indian concept of nation is to give you an idea that how different is our concept of nationhood and why our constitution had to adopt ideas from so many countries. The first topic that I talked about was distribution of power in India, which makes sure that no one organ of our government becomes omnipotent, all powerful, and our country does not turn autocratic. The second topic is the union. The union has a legislature and the executive. Executive has four components which we will talk about later. But first let us understand about what is executive and what is legislature. Executive, as the word suggests, means those who executes a policy, whereas legislature is the place where policies are formulated. So what is the difference between legislature and executive? The role of executive is to execute policies, to implement policies, whereas legislature is the place, parliament is the place where policies are formulated, debated, and then formulated. Remember, legislature can never implement policies. Legislature can also not sign international treaties, whereas executive can sign as well as ratify international treaty. So let's first talk about executive. Executive has four components: president, vice president, prime minister, and council of ministers. We will talk about all these four components of executive briefly. First one is the president. We will talk about who could be president of India, how a president is elected, what are his functions, how he could be disqualified. So the first question is, who could be president of India? To be President of India, you need to be above the age of 35. You need to be citizen of India. You shall not be holding any office of profit. What is the meaning of office of profit? Office of profit means any position which yields to you either salary or remuneration or brings you any kind of profit. That is known as office of profit. So be President of India, you shall not be holding any office of profit. The fourth qualification is that you should be eligible to get elected to Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha is part of legislature. Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha both are parts of legislature. So to be president, the fourth qualification that you need is that you should be qualified to get elected to Lok Sabha, the lower house of the parliament. If you fulfill these four criteria, if you have these four qualifications, then you could be President of India. What are the functions of President of India? President has 8 functions. The first one is executive, the second one is judiciary, the third one is legislative, the fourth one is diplomatic, fifth one is military, sixth one is pardoning. He has pardoning powers. Seventh one is financial. No bill could become a law until and unless the president signs on the bill. These are the functions of president. Now the question is, how is a president elected in India? Remember, India is a unique country with both parliamentary form of government and it also has the character of a republican government, like we have in United States of America. So we have a prime minister, but at the same time we also have president. The election of president of India is very different from the election of prime minister of India. How is a president elected in India? The election of president in India happens through an indirect method. What does it mean? It means that people of India do not elect president directly. People of India elect president of India indirectly. What does it mean? It means that only member of parliament, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and member of legislative assemblies of states and union territories can vote in the election of president of India. So the members of parliament, both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, and member of legislative assemblies of states and union territories, they are the people who vote during election of president of India. How does election take place? The election takes place through a secret ballot, and it happens through a system which is called proportional representation. This proportional representation is carried by the method of transfer of a single vote. We have this system to ensure that no state has advantage over other state. In India we have 29 states. These states are different in size and they have different number of legislators. For example, Uttar Pradesh has 403 legislators, whereas Union Territory of Delhi has only 70 legislators. If we do not have the system of proportional representation by transfer of a single vote, then Uttar Pradesh will have an advantage over Delhi. To discourage this, we have come to a system which is also known as Hare-Clark system. In this system, every person has one vote, but that vote does not carry the same weight. The weight is proportional. When somebody is contesting for the election of president, his or her name appears on the ballot. During the voting, the legislators, parliamentarians, they have to give their first preference and second preference. When a candidate accumulates enough votes to get elected to the president, then the surplus votes that he has got is transferred to the second candidate, and so on and so forth till all the positions are filled. This is how the election of president, this is the process of election of president in India. I have talked about who could be president of India, how he could be elected, what are his functions. Now we come to the fourth part, that how could a president be removed from the office. We have a system called impeachment. If a president is caught doing something which violates Constitution of India or the principles laid out in Constitution of India, then president could be impeached. To impeach President of India, a bill could be moved in either house of the parliament. In either house means either in Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha. Once the bill to impeach president is introduced, then that has to be debated. That house carries out an investigation. If that house comes to a conclusion that indeed the president was violating rules, principles laid out in the Constitution, then that house transfers that bill to the second house. Exactly the same procedure is adopted in the second house, and if the second house also passed that bill with more than 50% of vote, then the president of India is impeached. He is removed from his position. Now we come to the second component of executive, the vice president. The Vice President of India does not have any specific function. Unlike the President of India, Vice President of India does not have any specific function. He is ex officio chairman of Rajya Sabha. What is the meaning of ex officio chairman of India? It means being chairman of Rajya Sabha of India by virtue of being Vice President. And his role is at par with the Speaker of Lok Sabha. How is Vice President elected in India? The election of Vice President of India is different from the election of President of India. During the election of Vice President of India, members of legislative assemblies of union, state and union territories, they do not participate. Only members of parliament, Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha, they can only vote during the election of Vice President. There also we have a system of secret ballot and proportional vote, which is carried through transfer of a single vote, which is Hare-Clark system. Vice President, as I just said, does not have any specific function. How he could be removed? To remove Vice President of India, a bill has to be introduced only in the Rajya Sabha. The house where bill to impeach Vice President could be introduced is Rajya Sabha. That has to be the first house. If the Rajya Sabha passes that bill with more than 50% of vote after investigating the case, then that bill is sent to Lok Sabha, and if Lok Sabha also finds Vice President guilty, then he is impeached. So this is how a Vice President is removed. What are the criteria? Who is eligible to be Vice President of India? To be Vice President of India, you should be a citizen of India. You should be above the age of 30. You should not be holding any office of profit. And fourth qualification that you need to have to be Vice President of India is that, unlike the President of India, who should be qualified to be elected to Lok Sabha, in case of Vice President, you should be eligible to be elected to Rajya Sabha, not Lok Sabha. So this is how election of Vice President and his functions differ from President of India. Now we come to the third component in executive, that is the Prime Minister. To draw an analogy from cricket, the Prime Minister of India is like the captain of the cricket team. Below Prime Minister are the Council of Ministers, the cabinet ministers and Minister of State with independent charges, and so on and so forth. The captain of Union of India is the Prime Minister, and the real executive power is vested in the Prime Minister of India. The constitution says that the president of India is the head of union. He is also the supreme commander of armed forces, and all the executive powers are vested in the head of our state. But that is only on paper, because there is something more that the constitution says. It says that the president can discharge his duties as he is advised by the government, the council of ministers. So the president in effect is a rubber stamp, whereas the real executive power is vested in the prime minister of India. Who could be prime minister of India? Anyone who is qualified to be elected to Lok Sabha of India is could be prime minister of India. You have to be citizen of India as well to be prime minister of India. But unlike vice president and president, the rules are not laid out that who could be the prime minister of India, what is the qualification that you need to have, because it is the prerogative of the winning party to decide who could be the prime minister of India. To be prime minister, you just need to qualify for two things: citizen of India, and you should be eligible to get elected to the Lok Sabha. And if your party wins a majority or is able to cobble together a coalition, then your party could elect you to the prime minister's office. Then we come to the fourth component of executive, which is the council of ministers. Council of ministers has three different components: cabinet minister, you have minister of state with independent charge, and then you have just minister of state. Who is a cabinet minister? Cabinet minister is a man who is manning a ministry. That person has a portfolio and he is responsible for discharging all the duties of that particular ministry. Who is minister of state with independent charges? When a cabinet minister is not available for a particular ministry, then the man who mans that ministry is called minister of state with independent charges. He doesn't have cabinet rank. And then you have simply minister of state, which means that person is going to aid cabinet minister in discharging his or her duties. So these are the four components of executive. What is the meaning of executive? The meaning of executive is the organ of government which is responsible for executing policies. Then we come to the third topic that I wanted to talk about today. This is called legislature. The Indian legislature, the supreme legislature of India, is the parliament. Parliament has two houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So let us talk about Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha briefly. All the important things that we need to discuss, I will be talking about it. Lok Sabha of India, the sanctioned strength of Lok Sabha of India is 552. 530 are elected from states, 20 come from union territories, while two members of parliament are nominated by president of India. The sanctioned strength of the Lok Sabha is 553, and these members are directly elected by general electorate. Who can elect members of Lok Sabha? Anyone who is citizen of India and above the age of 18 could elect member of Lok Sabha. Then there is second house, which is called the upper house. It is Rajya Sabha. The sanctioned strength of Rajya Sabha is not more than 250. They are not directly elected by general electorate of this country. They are indirectly elected. Who can vote for Rajya Sabha members? Only members of legislative assemblies. Rajya Sabha is also known as Council of States, where states send their representative to the parliament. So our legislature, the supreme legislature of India, is the parliament, where policies are formulated and the executive implement those policies. These three topics that I discussed today, it is very important to know about them before we start talking about other things like the structure of governance at a state level and local level. Before knowing the basic things, we will not be able to proceed. So that was the motto behind talking about these things, all the things that I discussed today. In next video, when we will talk about Indian polity, we will be talking about chapters that are there in class 6th NCERT book. But before that, I will also be talking about governance at state level, union territory and local level. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you.